Oh, welcome to the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy, that actually smart. It's also the name of the show. Good morning. It's Monday. Are we looking forward to a Monday coming off of the clocks changing? Happy Monday. No, we're not. The clock's changing is maybe one of my least favorite things to happen all year. Now, the one positive that we can all kind of, I think, agree to here is that it is nice to be back into having daylight in the evening. Like, that is definitely worth the price of admission. But, man, waking up this morning was rough. I actually changed over my my alarm to, if you watch The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I changed it to the scene where Dunk is down on the ground. And a little egg starts telling to him, "Get up, sir! Get up! Get up! Get up!" And then, that was his name, Sir Arland, who was his, the guy who taught him everything, says, "Get up." That's my alarm clock right now. I can't say for sure that it helped, but I did wake up. Anyway, happy Monday. We have a lot to get into. We have a big signing of Jordan Davis. He comes back to the Philadelphia Eagles. And if I remember correctly, there were some people in the comments section back in the fall who thought Jordan Davis was going to be gone. No, he's back. We have rumors that Jalen Phillips could be getting a $20+ million a year deal. Jalen Carter potentially on the move. A.J. Brown's name still coming up in trade negotiations. How seriously, no one seems to know. We have all that going on. And if that weren't enough, that's just one team. I want to talk to you a little bit later on about the World Baseball Classic because there's something that made me feel seen, something that made me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. I want to get there as well a little bit later on in the show. The Sixers are an absolute disaster. Tyrese Maxey's hurt. Joel Embiid's hurt. Paul George suspended. VJ Edgecombe hurt. It's all falling apart. I'm now starting to actively wonder if it just makes sense for them to kind of go in the tank too. Speaking of the tank, the Flyers would never. But I'll tell you what else will never happen. Rick Tocchet will never go a week in his tenure as Flyers coach without saying at least one thing that makes you wonder, why is he so bad at communicating points clearly and not opening himself or the team up to any kind of scrutiny or questions? We're going to get there because he had quite the interesting statement about Matvei Michkov. And Michkov moving back to right wing with Bobby Brink's departure. We also want to touch on Alex Bump scoring his first goal with the Flyers in his first game. David Jiricek also finds the back of the net in his first game for the Phantoms. And then he has to go back to Iowa to go pick up his things. Apparently he just showed up here, didn't pack his things. So we'll get to all of that. Is there more? I don't know. Is that enough for a Monday? Is that okay for a Monday? I think that's a lot of stuff. I'm going to go out to the comments and then we'll get diving into everything going on. All right. Nick Abe says, "Hey guys, we're back." Ford is listening through his car. Bless Ford. Ford is nothing if not incredibly dedicated, probably the best dedicated person on the show. Believe me, China is what he says. Let's see. Nick Abe says, "You see the Sabres first in the Atlantic." Yes, it was crazy. AJ obviously was watching it as well. Said Sabres Lightning was an insane game to watch. Turn off the Red Wings to watch that absolute pay-per-view of a game. Incredible number of fights, 15 total goals scored between the teams. Absolutely bananagrams. Let's see. Nick Abe says, FYI, Eagles got over $100 million in cap space next summer. They'll sign everyone. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not opposed to the idea. We'll see if it happens or not. Peter Rice is here. Says, "Good morning. Good Monday morning, Russ." Good Monday morning to you, Peter. Yes. Let's see. We got some stuff about culture over here, too. AJ says, "With the Rangers locker room cancer on injured reserve, do you feel good about the Rangers Flyers tonight? Is Mika going to show up and put up another Hattie?" Every time Mika Zibanejad plays against the Flyers, it feels like he's a hat trick waiting to happen. I don't know who's going to be in net for the Flyers tonight. If Erson's in net, I probably like the Rangers' chances better. Flyers are in this weird spot where they just keep racking up points. They keep winning games even though the playoffs are very much not in their best interest and probably not very likely to happen. But yet, we continue to see them each and every freaking game at this point go out and they're getting at least a loser point. The other night they pick up a win in a shootout because Trevor Zegras, of course, is just unbeatable in the shootout. Let's see. Ford noting about the weather. That last evening was wonderful to be outside and enjoy the warm air. We actually were out in the backyard, cleaned up the yard a little bit. I felt pretty good about things. Let's see. WAJ says, one positive is my Packers got a pick for Roshan Gary. Woohoo. All right, well, there you go. Find something good. Amy says, my 10-year-old was up at 5. I was up at 4 and couldn't get my 5-year-old up. I had an impossible time sleeping last night. I don't know. I was up so many times last night. I don't know why. I almost went to the gym this morning at like 4 in the morning because I was so miserable. And then I did fall back asleep, and then I couldn't wake up. It was fine. Everything's fine. Landros is here. Says trading Jalen Carpenter is stupid unless there's something the public doesn't know. Well, that makes me think that there's something, okay? Makes me think there's something. Okay. Jason Franklin says taco. Oh, that goofball. Yeah. Tocchet's got some stuff to say. MJ Bruno says, God, I love the idea of the Flyers adding another 14th overall pick that will be a bottom 6 guy. Yeah. Landro says the way the Flyers draft doesn't matter if they finish with the 10th or 15th pick in the upcoming draft. Yeah, okay. I know. All right, so let's start with positives. Let's start with the Eagles. We will find our way to the Flyers and the Sixers and the World Baseball Classic. And if there's anything else that I miss, you guys can let me know in the comments. But I do want to start with the big news of the weekend. And this is news that I honestly kind of expected to see happen. And I think it was very clear that this was ultimately going to happen. The Eagles know how important this guy is. Jordan Davis deserves a massive shout out. If you remember last season, Jalen Carter has Spitgate happen with Dak Prescott. And that immediately thrust Jordan Davis into what I would consider an unenviable position of having to take an incredible amount of snaps and be the guy who can anchor the interior of that defensive line. Jordan Davis showed up in incredible shape. Now, I don't mean to sound like Rick Tocchet here, but Jordan Davis did show up in the best shape of his life. And he earned himself a massive payday. If you remember, there were some questions the year prior from Vic Fangio to Jordan Davis about his weight. If you remember, probably about 18 months ago, somewhere around there, Bryden Baldinger put out a video breaking down Jordan Davis's play, not from this past season, but the season before. So that would have been the 2024 into 2025 season, and kind of questioning the work ethic and kind of questioning the conditioning of Jordan Davis. Well, he showed up for the 25-26 season in great shape. He was an absolute force on the interior. And as got reported over the weekend, he's agreed to a 3-year extension for $78 million. That's $26 million per year, $65 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid nose tackle in NFL history. Now, for a defense that largely has been kind of built on this idea of Davis the run stopper and then Jalen Carter, who's been compared to many of the greats, you want to believe that if you can have those two guys locked up, to go with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean at corner, to go with Zach Bond, the All-Pro, Jahad Campbell, likely going to let Nakobe Dean leave, you still have a wildly successful, talented, and young is a big key to this defense. When you look at the Eagles' defense as it's currently constructed, you're not looking at a bunch of guys who are 34, 35 on their last rodeo, having to patchwork together some form of a defense where you're maybe a year or two away from a young corner being able to possibly develop into being a slot guy. No, you've got your corners locked down. You've got Jordan Davis locked down. You got Zach Bond. You've got Jahad Campbell. I still think they need to do something on the edge, but you do have potentially Jalen Phillips working on being negotiated with around $20 million a year. Jordan Davis, to me, was the most important free agent you had as a team. Jalen Phillips is certainly up there, but I think Davis was the most important one. And it actually does kind of start to raise some questions about Jalen Carter, because if you remember, Micah Parsons said on a podcast with Jordan Love and someone else, I don't remember who it is right now. Micah Parsons had said that he only would have wanted to play in Philly if he was playing with Jalen Carter, and there was this idea out there that maybe Jalen Carter was the player being traded back to Dallas in a proposal. Now, that was kind of back and forth, and it was a little bit of an unknown, unsubstantiated sort of rumor. But it does make you start to wonder if the Eagles have been open to moving Jalen Carter. Is that what's ultimately going to happen? Now, I think it's important to kind of note there are a lot of balls up in the air with the Eagles, right? And we'll take this down. The Eagles are certainly on the hunt for additional talent. They were rumored to be very interested in Max Crosby, who ultimately went for, the 14th overall pick in this draft and then another first-round pick. So he ended up landing in Baltimore. So that took him off the table. I have not looked to see. I don't believe Trey Hendrickson has landed anywhere yet. But this idea is out there that potentially Jalen Carter could be moved. I would absolutely hate to see Jalen Carter moved. The only reason that you consider moving a player of that caliber, of that talent, the only reason is because you are concerned with what happens if you give the guy the big contract. And there have been some questions. I mean, this isn't to kind of go back to a horrible incident that happened with him in college, but it is probably worth noting that there have been some questions around whether or not Jalen Carter's a guy that you fully want to invest in. Now, Jeremy Fowler put out a report this weekend that not only are the Eagles trying to re-sign Jalen Phillips to a $20+ million per year deal, but they have received trade calls on Jalen Carter. Now, receiving trade calls is not the same thing as saying you're actively trying to move him. The Eagles have also received trade calls on A.J. Brown. Most notably, there was a report out there from a week or so ago that the Patriots offered a first and a second round pick, or a first and a third, and the Eagles said no. But it is probably worth throwing out there that there are teams that very clearly seem to believe that Jalen Carter could be available. Now, if you're the Eagles, to me, I don't look at this possibility and say that's a pick. I think you need to have an established player that comes back in a trade. I'm not looking for the 28th pick in the draft or whatever. This has to be an absolute haul. I mean, let's not forget, there was a time that Jalen Carter was being compared to Aaron Donald in terms of his ability to impact the line of scrimmage. So I would be deeply concerned as an Eagles fan if the Eagles decide to move on from Jalen Carter. The only reason you do it is because you're afraid that the guy, the actual human being, isn't fully there, or you're worried about what happens to that guy and his work ethic and his demeanor if you give him that money. I would like to imagine in a good scenario here that the Eagles believe that Jalen Carter is a difference maker, and if they are going to move him, they're going to get a haul back for him. I don't like seeing his name in the rumors, though. It does kind of worry me. I think part of it is just because you also have on the offensive side of the ball, I cannot envision a scenario where the Eagles want to move A.J. Brown, but yet you get Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni both coming out saying, we're not looking to move him. But then you see all these reports out there that teams are checking in, they're offering a first-round pick plus. I don't know what to make of anything. I think, was it Diana Rossini late last week also put it that there are a bunch of teams right now who are interested in A.J. Brown who want a resolution to that situation ASAP, and it feels like that's kind of holding up the market. We'll see if that ultimately comes to fruition or not. That's where we're at on the Eagles right now. Jalen Phillips, I think, coming back would be a really good get for this team. He also fits the timeline. He's also not one of those 34, 35-year-old guys who's kind of at the end of his career. I like the idea of bringing him back. And again, you got to see what this dude looks like in this defense. You got to see what this dude looks like in Vic Fangio's defense, and it certainly felt like there's a lot of positives to take away from him. The guy's only 26. I think he turns 27 in May. He fits the timeline perfectly. Bring back Jalen Phillips. Let's have some fun. All right, let me go out to the comments here real quick, and then we'll get back out to it. Where are the people? Let's see. This is stuff about the time. Nick Abe says, Eagles will pay Carter. It'll be the funniest shit ever. Phillips will get paid first. Raymond Supper says, as far as I know, the Eagles don't have a currently signed tight end on the roster. If you remember, though, I think it was Friday's episode, we talked about Dallas Goedert and the dead cap money. Was it $19 million in potential dead cap money that the Eagles would have to take, and they could split it, I think, across 2 years, or maybe it was $20 million. And they could try to split that money across 2 seasons. And then that kind of led to the question, at least for me, if you're the Eagles, why would you want a dead money hit on your cap if you could just bring back Dallas Goedert? Like, I think this offense is clearly better when he's in it. Now, granted, there have been injury concerns. But, man, if you bring back Dallas Goedert, I'd rather pay him $15, $20 million, whatever it is, than have to take a $19 or $20 million dead cap hit. Like, that's just stupid to me. You're effectively paying someone else to have Dallas Goedert. Or, in some way, you're effectively paying the dark void of the caps to not have Dallas Goedert on your team. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, let's see. MJ Burns says it's a very good draft for edge rushers and defensive tackles. One has to wonder if Carter's character issues could be worse than we know. If they move Jalen Carter, that will tell me that they think there is no helping him from a character perspective. That would tell me that the fears and concerns around Jalen Carter's character are real and that the Eagles feel like they just don't have a way to get through. It's possible. I mean, there were some murmurs, right, last year around Spitgate, and then it felt like things were better. But then there were moments where it felt like in the season, you just expected Jalen Carter to have a bigger impact on games, and he didn't. So I don't know. We'll find out. Jake Rebby's here. Says, good morning, Russell and Russettes. It's a beautiful morning. The sun is shining. Birds are chirping. Spring is here. I have bad news for you, Jay, if you're in the Philly area. I saw a thing going around Twitter today, or was Facebook? It was one or the other, but it was actually like a somewhat reliable weather outlet. And they were looking at the multi-day forecast. And I want to say is it the 17th? Is the 17th St. Paddy's Day weekend? And it was showing that a few of the models, if you aggregate them together, they've been like pretty accurate this winter. And it's showing like a potential foot of snow around St. Paddy's Day in the Philadelphia area. So I hope that model's wrong. We've gotten our snow. It was a lovely time, and now I'm done with it. So we're done. Landro says, as Howie says, you don't trade good players, you trade for good players. Unless you get a good player back for the good player. Like, in theory, let's just say conceptually that the Micah Parsons thing was real. And that Micah Parsons was right and he didn't misspeak. And the Eagles were willing to trade Jalen Carter to Dallas for Micah Parsons. That, to me, is the kind of haul you have to get back. If you're going to trade away Jalen Carter, you need to have somebody who can be incredibly disruptive. And that doesn't mean that if you're the Eagles, you trade Jalen Carter to a team with a wide receiver who's going to replace A.J. Brown, and then you're going to spin A.J. Brown off for a high first-round pick. Like, that to me doesn't make sense. But you do kind of have to wonder if Carter and Brown's names are really out there, and if the team is seriously open to trading one or both of them. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I find it concerning. But then again, I'm not in the room. I don't know. I'm not in that building. I don't know what these guys are like. I just look at the talent, and I think to myself, I would not like to see the move off of Carter or Brown. Let's see. Landro says, if the Brown contract was not such a gut punch if traded before June 1st, then I could see a move, but the contract makes it really tough. They could also decide to wait until after June 1st. I mean, like, listen, we'll get back to the Eagles here in a second, but, like, if you miss this news, this is, like, one of the craziest things to come out. That's it. I was just trying to remember how to spell the guy's last name. We're good. Everything's fine. Tua got released. And not only did Tua get released, he's got a $99 million dead cap hit. Like, I want you guys to think about that for a second. That is absolutely astronomical. An insane amount of money. $99 million in dead cap that the Miami Dolphins are going to be paying to not have him play for their team. Think about how insane that is. That, to me, is like absolute lunacy. Even if you are like pretty sold on the guy not being your quarterback of the future, not being the quarterback of your present, how the hell do you take on $99 million in a dead cap hit? Here you go. Like, anytime you think to yourself, there's no way that the Eagles would want to take on the dead cap hit for Dallas Goedert, which I don't think they would. Anytime you think to yourself, they don't want to take on the dead cap hit for A.J. Brown if they trade him, I think you're probably right. Miami, look at this. Schefter put this out earlier this morning, about 2 hours ago. The Dolphins are releasing quarterback Tua Tagovailoa with a post-June 1st designation. By cutting Tagovailoa, Miami will take on an NFL record $99 million in dead money, split over 2 years. But the new GM, John Eric Sullivan, and head coach Jeff Hafley now get a fresh start at the quarterback position. $99 million! Russ, don't yell into the mic. I know. $99 million is a lot of million. It's more than one. It's less than 100, but it's very close to 100. $99 million. They are so out on Tua that the Dolphins are like, no. We will pay this astronomical, unprecedented sum of money to get him the hell off the team. You know how nuts that is? That is absolutely insane. $99 million. You mean to tell me that things are that bad with Tua in Miami? 99 million. Crazy. Bananagrams. I also just saw something pop up in the chat. Now I'm wondering if this is real or not. If this is, that's certainly something and something notable. I'm going to see if this... Oh, my God. Oh, boy. Now, listen, I'm not a big college sports fan, as many of you know, but this just broke 3 minutes ago. On 3 reports, Ohio State President Ted Carter has resigned after informing trustees about an inappropriate relationship. Ruh-roh. So, okay. We just went back. Let's just think about this for a second. We were very much in on Eagles back-to-back breaking-ish news things. We went Tua, $99 million dead cap hit over 2 years, and now Ohio State's president resigns after informing trustees about an inappropriate relationship. Why are all these... I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get it at all. Okay. So there you go. Those are 2 non-Eagles notes. Please enjoy. Let's see. B. Condor, going back to Tua really quick, says Dolphins are going to be historically bad. I think you're probably right. Yeah, it's going to be pretty awful. MJ Bruno says, sounds like the Finns need a freshly wrapped Tanner McKee. You know what? I'm right here with Nick Ave. First round pick for Tanner McKee. All the best to you, Miami. Good luck. All right. Those are the Eagles news and notes, I think. I'm going to double check. I did a little rundown for myself to try to stay on task today. I think that's about where I wanted to go. Okay. So we still have to get to the Flyers. We still have to get to the Sixers. We still have to get to the Phillies. Okay. This is not true. I need people. Listen, this happened last week where somebody threw out a ridiculous trade rumor. I forget which one it was. But like somebody threw out a ridiculous NHL trade that involved the Flyers. And I'm like, that is not real. I need to get that as a sound drop. I need to get the sound drop of that lady on the plane saying that MF is not real. I need to get that. Do I have that one right now? Producer Russ, do you have that clip loaded up?
Not answering any of your questions.
That's not helpful, Torts. Thank you. That's not helpful. All right, let's go over to the Flyers. So I had like this true and honest thought that I wanted to go into Bump and Jiricek, and we're going to get there in a second. But like there is a quote that came out, and I know how this is going to play. All right, I 100% know how this is going to play. I'll be clear, because for the most part, I feel like when I look at the comments on YouTube and I look at the comments on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere else that this show goes, the vast majority of people who end up watching this stuff and reacting and listening and commenting, they are of a similar mindset when it comes to the Flyers, as I am. Now, last week, if you remember, we did 2 shows on a Friday. We did a 10 a.m. show where I lambasted the Flyers for a terrible effort against Utah, a 3-0 shutout, and I openly questioned why this supposed rebuild looks very, very similar to a decade ago. In fact, pointing out that at the trade deadline, the Flyers had the same exact record and same amount of points in 2016 as they did in 2026. And simply questioning aloud why the Flyers would not make a big move, would not trade away like Erasmus Ristolainen and try to improve their lottery odds, not necessarily to get that number 1 pick, but to prevent themselves from getting jumped and pushed farther and farther away from the top 10, where it becomes less and less likely you're going to find an impact player. Okay, all that lovely stuff. And I realized that after the fact The morning show skewed really negative, but I feel like it did, in fact, resonate with a large segment of the fan base that once again is watching a team likely miss the playoffs and kind of fall apart down the stretch again. And later in the day, we did the NHL trade deadline show, and I calmed down like a good bit. And we did talk about the fact that Jiricek, I think, is a really good pickup for the Flyers. And, Bobby Brink was a wonderful guy and a good player. But that ultimately, I think Alex Bump is going to be a good player. And he scored a goal in his first game. And David Jiricek scored a goal for the Phantoms and also fell down earlier in the game. And so you kind of got, apparently, and it seems like Minnesota and Columbus fans are like, oh, you guys got the full David Jiricek experience here, falling down, kind of looking like a baby giraffe on ice, all that. But then he can score, and he can man a power play. And that all of a sudden got me very excited. Like, let us not forget, the Flyers have not exactly cultivated a system in recent years where defensemen are truly dynamic on the power play. Jamie Drysdale, when he was acquired in the Cutter-Gauthier trade, was thought to be a guy maybe like Shane Gostisbehere adjacent, a similar version of a player, hopefully better at 5-on-5 than Gostisbehere was, but like definitely a guy who could be the quarterback of your top power play unit. Under Tortorella, there were some opportunities. Under Tocchet, there have not been as many. The success hasn't been there. Sanheim, to me, is like a decent power play 2 quarterback, sort of, but to me isn't a guy that like should be manning the point on the power play. Okay, so we have that. But like if Jiricek at his size at 6'4", and only 22 years of age, if that guy can figure out a way to develop, likely with the Phantoms this year, maybe he gets a call up to the Flyers late in the season. If that guy is able to figure it out, and if that guy is able to figure out physicality, right, and he can be an asset to you on the power play, then it makes it an even better trade. I obviously care first and foremost that the dude is able to like be a, at worst, second pair defenseman and can be a responsible defensive defenseman. But when you have a little bit of offensive upside, I'm game for it. If you have some power play ability, I'm also here for that. So actually, look, we did say a little bit of positives, right? We had David Jiricek, good job to him. Alex Bump scored, totally looked like he belonged in his first game with the Flyers. All of that is good. I did see some people, it was funny. Jiricek apparently, when he got traded from Minnesota, he was, I guess, assigned to the Iowa Wild. And he flew straight to where the Phantoms were playing. So he went straight to the Phantoms game, scored a goal. And then last night, so on Sunday, he wasn't in the lineup. And there was a reporter, or it was the play-by-play guy, I forget who it was, somebody put out there that Jiricek would not be playing because he went back to Iowa to get his stuff to then bring it back. And I saw people on Twitter going like, oh, this guy can't like hire somebody to move him. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, the guy could have also done the inverse, right? He could have been in Iowa, packed all of his belongings, and then come to the East where he didn't have a place clearly set up yet. Or go to the first game, score a goal. All right, you have to miss a game because you have to go back to Iowa, get all your stuff, get that kind of squared away, and hopefully now he's got an apartment or they've got him something where he can kind of get himself sort of squared away, set up. I mean, I would hope that the organization has figured that out. I would assume they have. Remember, Kolosov a year ago was set up at a place close to the arena where the Phantoms play. I have to think that they have something similar until Jiricek can kind of get on his feet and get himself like an apartment or whatever. That didn't bother me, but there are psychos on Twitter, and I'm not surprised that some people got upset about something that they shouldn't be upset about. Okay, so those are the positives. Bump really did look like he belonged, okay? I want to believe that like Bump is going to be a good player for this team. There were a lot of people within this organization who thought a year ago that Bump was really soaring and that it was a very good chance that at some point this season he was going to play. Back around Dev Camp, there was also a thought, if Bump can stay healthy, he might make the opening night roster. That did not happen, right? I think there was an injury. He didn't ultimately make the team. He's been playing with the Phantoms. I think he got hurt again when he was with the Phantoms. I don't remember exactly. I think he did, though. But he finally got his opportunity. Bobby Brink gets moved, opens up a spot. Alex Bump comes up, scores a goal. Great. Here is where things get a little bit annoying, okay? So Charlie O'Connor, good reporter, Charlie O'Connor. He asks a question to Rick Tocchet. Okay. He asks a question to Rick Tocchet about Michkov and about Michkov's positioning, right? As we know, Rick Tocchet has wanted to play Matvei Michkov on the left wing. Michkov, pretty much his entire career, has played on the right wing. When we talked to Hilferty and Jonesy and Briere at the start of the 24-25 season, they noted that they think Michkov can play either side. But he's largely played on the right wing. And under John Tortorella, he found a lot of success on the right wing. And also found a lot of success playing right wing and also being on top power play unit. So, Charlie O'Connor asks Rick Tocchet why he moved Michkov back to right wing. And let us not forget that Michkov also looked like a lot more like the guy from a season ago, playing on that right wing, hooked up with Denver Barkey on a goal. Here's Rick Tocchet's comment. Quote, well, Bobby leaving, and then Mitch wants to try it. We'll see. I've got my thoughts on that, but we'll see how it goes. Now, if you look at that comment in a vacuum, you say, that's a nothing burger of a quote. Okay. Brink is gone. Opens up a spot at right wing. Michkov wants to try going back to right wing. We'll see. I've got my thoughts, but we'll see how it goes. You say, all right. Except here's the thing. Everything that Rick Tocchet says about Matvei Michkov is under scrutiny because of how this season has gone and because of the incessant going back to him showing up at camp out of shape. And it feels like there is a bit of disdain. I don't think Rick Tocchet hates Matvei Michkov. To be clear, I don't think he hates Michkov. I do think that Rick Tocchet does not like the amount of attention that Matvei Michkov gets. I would say that if we were to sit down with Rick Tocchet away from the cameras, away from microphones, get off the record, I think Rick Tocchet would probably intimate that he thinks Matvei Michkov has the potential to be a really good player. He might not know if he's going to be an elite player, but he thinks he's going to be a really good player. And since he's only projecting him as a really good player, not an elite player, there's only so much wiggle room he's willing to give this player. If you had a Connor McDavid level guy, or somebody who projected to be a Connor McDavid level player, or if you had a Macklin Celebrini here, or even if you wanted to say a Connor Bedard here, I think that Tocchet's tone is probably different. And I'm not saying it's a Russian or anti-Russian bias. I think that there's a certain ceiling that each of those guys has, right? Versus what Michkov's perceived ceiling is, or at least what he's kind of established in his own mind as Michkov's ceiling. Is like, why am I going to break all of my own rules? Why am I going to bend over backwards for a guy that I'm not even convinced is going to be elite? I think that that's probably where we're at. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure, though. I think that's a good chunk of this. But the problem is that if Tocchet hadn't established a clear frustration with lines of questioning around Michkov, which goes back to a press conference when they were 17, 10, and 7 or whatever, right? Where there were 5 questions about Michkov. And Tocchet did kind of like his Philly version of the PD from when he got frustrated about questions with Elias Pettersson out in Vancouver. He had a similar, not meltdown, but a similar interaction with the media around Michkov. If it weren't for all of that, you would look at this quote and say, oh, that's nothing. But there's already a heightened sense of criticism around this coach. I can tell you right now, I can't remember a fan base being as against a head coach in his first year as this Flyers fan base is against Rick Tocchet. I could not tell you how many people have said, I really liked Rick Tocchet, the player. I can't stand him as the head coach of this team. There are people who come up to us at Press Row Show who intimate that. There are people who DM that. There are people who respond in the comment section of these YouTube videos or on TikTok or on Instagram. Like, there is a sentiment out there of people being very frustrated with the head coach. And I think a large part of that is because of the way that he's handled Michkov publicly. You could also make a case that, like, it's even a worse look because of Michkov's language barrier. it's not as if you're kind of fighting a fair fight. One, you're in a position of power as the head coach over a second-year player. Two, you can say whatever the hell you want in your native language. Michkov can't exactly do that, right? Because he doesn't have the English fluency to be able to go toe-to-toe. And anything that he does say in Russian when a translator is made available is also going to be sanitized, because that is just part of what happens with the team-provided translator. So, not ideal. Now, I look at this quote, and it says a couple of things to me. But it's really this part here that does it. Mitch wants to try it. That doesn't bother me. Of course he does. He thinks that he's more of a right wing. He's more comfortable there. We'll see. All right. I've got my thoughts on that. This is the part that you don't need to say. Okay? If you say, well, Bobby leaving, Michkov wants to try a right wing, we'll see how it goes. That's it. If you just go, well, Bobby leaving, and then Mitch wants to try it, we'll see how it goes. That's it. Leave it there. I've got my thoughts on that. Why do I highlight I've got my thoughts on that? Because that tells me that there is at least a bit of hesitation. There is a bit of frustration. Dare I say there may be a little bit of internal conflict about this decision to play Michkov at right wing. So I tweeted about it. This is my thing. I put this out yesterday. Quote, I've got my thoughts on that, right? And as I noted, that to me opens up a line of questioning that this was influenced by the front office and or the coach isn't aligned fully. Again, a flippant line that leads to speculation. To be clear, I don't hate Rick Tocchet. I don't think Rick Tocchet was the right hire. I don't think Rick Tocchet's a bad coach. But this is the kind of thing that annoys me. These are those unforced errors. These are those unforced errors that should piss off a PR staff. These are the kind of unforced errors that should have the front office frustrated again. Similar to the moment that they had coming out of the carnival, where Tocchet kind of threw out the idea of diet, showing up for treatments late, talking about Michkov being out of shape again, all that lovely stuff. See, I had this moment of clarity this weekend, and I could be wrong. You guys can let me know in the comments. I had this moment of clarity of why it's so frustrating. What Rick Tocchet is doing, and the way that he's talked about Michkov this year, and the way that he has utilized him, and the way that he has kind of tried to defend using Michkov, it feels like an extension of the worst case scenario of what I thought John Tortorella would be with Michkov. If you remember, I was critical of Tortorella for scratching Michkov, for benching Michkov for third periods of games, right? But I think what's actually happening here is it feels like a lot of those negative feelings that were already kind of there from Tortorella's tenure with Michkov have extended into the first year of Tocchet. And I think that on balance, if you were to ask fans who are frustrated this season, of which there are many, if you presented it to them as, do you feel like this is a continuation of the negativity of Tortorella from the end of last season? I would bet a considerable amount of money that a large percentage of that group would say, yeah, that's actually it. That's it. The fears that people had around how Tortorella would use and talk about Michkov are coming to fruition with Tocchet. And I think that's why people have soured on the Tocchet hire so quickly, right? Conceptually, if the Flyers had hired Schwarber, who I actually thought would have made sense in year 3 of a rebuild, won a national championship, Alex Bump familiar with the guy. I am not opposed to the idea of a college coach who's had success giving that another shot. It doesn't mean that it's going to be Dave Haxtell 2.0. If you had hired a Schwarber, and Schwarber showed up here in his first year and was kind of in this public pissing match with the budding star of the team, I'd be like, yo, dude, what are you doing? Well, what the hell is this, right? But I also tend to think that a Pat Schwarber probably wouldn't do this, right? You would probably not have moved Michkov from the right wing to the left wing. You probably would have tried to do your damnedest to set him up for success, knowing that doing so sets your team up for the best path to success. there would not be a lot of ego because you have a coach hired in his first year to be an NHL head coach and not make a ton of waves and work to actively develop the young players, right? But instead, you hired somebody who, in a lot of ways, has some of those similar warts that Tortorella had, namely not liking being called out on things, having some ego, which I think you have to have if you're a coach. In fairness, I do think you have to have some level of ego if you're a head coach in this league. If you're a top player in this league, there has to be some ego. You somehow managed to get one of a very finite number of jobs in the best league of that respective sport in the entire world. There has to be ego. You should have some form of ego. And yet, unforced error. Don't have a public spat or make it seem, give off the perception that you're going to war against the budding star of the player, the same guy that the GM and the president of the team went up to New York to go pick up from the fucking airport, okay? It's a little bit different. Don't do that. But that's also not the thing that you should have to tell a guy who has been a head coach at multiple stops, and telling a guy not to have these kind of like flubs, these verbal flubs, these unforced error flubs with his quotes. This is something that you shouldn't have to tell somebody who's been on TV before as an analyst. So I'm just kind of at a spot where I'm constantly like, man, what are we doing here? Come on, man. Let's just stop. All right. Bobby moved on. Michkov wants to try right wing. We'll see how it goes. Cool. Done and dusted. No big deal. I have my thoughts on that. Well, then tell you, what are your thoughts? When you're the head coach and you say, Bobby's gone, Mitch wants to try right wing, I have some thoughts. We'll see how it goes. What are your thoughts? Dime, señor, por favor. Dime tus opiniones. ¿Qué vas a pasar? Like, let me know. What's going on, man? What are your thoughts? If your thoughts are, Michkov really wants to go back to right wing, I really would like to keep him on the left. But you know what? We're at a point in the season where I'm fine with allowing him to go see if he can find more success playing on that right wing and playing off of Barkey the way that he has. I'm fine with it because I think ultimately it could also help Barkey in his development. There's a good answer. There's a very simple answer. That one's a positive. That looks like you're now reaffirming the support of your players. It looks like you are actively trying to do something that probably does help your team, putting Michkov on the right wing. It also talks about the development of a young player in Denver, Barkey. Like, that's a good answer. What are the other thoughts? When you say that, but you're saying, hey, we're moving him back to right wing, I have my thoughts. That does make it sound like someone else has gotten involved in the conversation about moving him back to right wing, right? That would almost make you think, are Keith Jones, Dan Hilferty, Danny Briere, some combination, one of those three, two of those three, all three? Who's involved in this decision to move Michkov back to right wing if you imply through your quote that you are not the one making that decision or you are not 100% committed to it? Like, if you're Rick, like, here's the thing. If you're Rick Tocchet and you don't agree with moving Michkov to right wing, Brink gets moved, Michkov comes to you and says, I want to play right wing. And you're Tocchet, and you are resolute in the belief that Michkov needs to be a left winger. It is better for your team for him to be a left winger. Then he says left wing. That's it. That's the conversation. That's it. Short of that, there's now going to be this open conversation. And there has been. Surprising. I know. There's been an open conversation on social media about it. Are we at the 24-hour mark? We passed it? Where people are going, well, what are the thoughts? Why are we throwing out this idea? And again, we'll talk about this tonight on Press Row Show. And I'm sure Anthony's going to tell me, Russ, you're making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. He's just expressing that maybe he thinks that he was better on the... Yeah, cool. Don't say that. Am I insane? I'm starting to feel like I'm insane. I pissed Tocchet off at the carnival because I said, given where things are kind of trending, do you remove restrictions from players? And he got kind of jazzed up, a little bit defensive. So he doesn't put the restrictions on players. To me, a restriction is taking a guy from a position that he's always played moving him to a position that's kind of out of sorts. That to me is restricting his ability to perform at the highest level for your team. And if you are actively trying to win games and make the playoffs, you're kind of inhibiting the ability of that player to succeed at that level and help your team win games. Okay. That to me is a restriction. Minutes limits. Not playing him on the top power play unit. That is a restriction. I didn't think it was unfair. Got mad. Okay. I'll happily sit down with Rick Tocchet again. Happily ask these questions. I'd say non-zero chance that at some point in the next 6 months, I will probably sit down with Rick Tocchet and the Snow the Goalie crew. And I'm going to ask questions again because this is what I do. I don't think Rick Tocchet's a bad guy. I don't think he hates Matvei Michkov. But I'm at the point now where it's like, yo, just like give us a fucking sanitized hockey answer. It's amazing. All we ever want from hockey people, hockey players, hockey coaches, open up a little bit. Tell us how you really feel. And then with Tocchet, when it comes to Michkov, it's like, actually, maybe don't tell us what you think. Just tuck that one away. All right? Tell us how you feel about Denver Barkey, Alex Bump, Travis Konecny, Travis Evans. That's fine. Michkov, maybe don't tell us. Maybe don't tell us. All right, I think that was fair. I'm sure I'll find out if it was viewed as not fair by somebody within the organization. I'm sure I will hear about that between now and, let's say, 8 o'clock tonight. That's about as fair as I can be. Nick Abe threw this idea out there about culture. I do have one issue that came out of the Briere press conference, and I was kind of running this back in my mind. We heard that phrase, play the right way again. And there's a level of frustration that I have when I hear that, because I know that it's just a hockey trope, and I know that it's something that this organization falls back on all the time, and I know it's a thing that is said in league circles and is said by other teams, playing the right way. The problem is that when you find yourself once again, probably on the outside looking in at the playoffs and not doing so from a position of power where like you're going to end up with a top 5 pick in this draft, when you're constantly doing that, there becomes a breakdown of fan belief and fan sentiment that this is any different. And so then playing the right way indicates, play like a middle 6 forward or a bottom 6 forward. Play like a defensive defenseman. Don't actively create. Try to play some close games, occasionally win in a shootout, sometimes take a game to overtime, but ultimately be in what I've seen people refer to as the mushy middle. I call it hockey purgatory. Every time I hear culture and every time I hear play the right way, I gag. Tortorella preached culture. He did. Torts preached culture and then had a blow up with Cam York that ultimately was the final straw and apparently one of many things that led to Tortorella's dismissal. So if the guy who was head of your culture previously had such a dumb blow up that it was the final straw that broke the camel's back, that would indicate that like the culture maybe wasn't perfect. Tocchet comes in. This public shit with Michkov is just, to me, not a great look, right? And as such, I sit back and I openly question, how important is the culture? How good is the culture if this kind of stuff happens? All right. Jay Grabby says, Friedman said on 32 Thoughts after the deadline, the Flyers were working on something big, but weren't able to get it done. Any ideas? Yeah, I have an idea. Somebody from the Flyers front office fed that to Elliot Friedman. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that in the least bit. Because what is big? What is big? No, I don't believe that in the least bit. I think that is front office to Elliot Friedman. I do not. I have heard nary a whisper, not even so much as a like second, third, fourth hand account of the Flyers being even remotely in the ballpark on something big. The only thing that I have had relayed to me is that the Flyers thought they maybe had a Risto deal, and it wasn't at the value that like we certainly expected they could get, right? Like I thought that given the Olympics that he had and given the amount of defensemen and given some of the packages that were handed out for other dudes, I thought a first was realistic, or a a second and a really good prospecty, kind of like on the fringes sort of player, maybe could have been in play, right? It doesn't sound like that was the case. So unless that's the big thing, I think if the Flyers had been offered a first, they would have taken it. I think if the Flyers had been offered a first and a prospect, they certainly would have taken it for Risto. So no, I don't think that there's anything big they were working on. I could be wrong. But like, I also, this is how do I say this in a nice way? I once again remind people that the national media people that do this stuff in every league, they are information brokers that get their stuff from front offices, agents, sometimes players or player camps. This idea that there were all of these teams, more teams than ever before, interested in Rasmus Ristolainen, really sounded like front office or agent speak, trying to drum up a market for Risto. It doesn't sound like it ever really came that close. Maybe one offer was out there, and the Flyers could have made that move. I don't think that would have inspired a ton of confidence based on the apparent return that might have been coming back. I don't think fans would have been upset, but I think they would have been like, oh, we couldn't have gotten more? Okay. I will just note, like, I don't really believe any of this shit. Like, once the deadline's done, I don't know. What could big have been? Were they working on an Elias Pettersson trade? Like, no, I can't imagine so. Nick Abe asks, Robert Thomas? No. I don't think they were even remotely interested in Robert Thomas, which is a totally different issue altogether. Philly Sports Experts asks, Russ, why doesn't Ant ever say what he actually thinks the Flyers should do? Instead, he just says what you want is wrong. Because Ant believes that they're doing the right thing. I don't have another way to say this. I yelled about this last week, but like, Ant is not disingenuous about how he feels about this rebuild or lack thereof or whatever. Like, I'm very loud and brash in my take on this rebuild and where things are at. And I don't like the way that Ant goes about expressing himself, right? I think that it's childish and it's useless and it's not playing the role of like a pro wrestling heel. I think it's largely just rude and quasi-demeaning. But I've done a show with the guy for 8 years, so I kind of know how he reacts to conflicting viewpoints. I know how I react, too. I typically get louder and more vociferous in my backing of my own opinion. No one's perfect. But I don't think he thinks they should be doing anything different. What he says on the show is how he feels. He doesn't defend like the Danny Briere move or lack thereof, and then the camera goes off, and then he says, yeah, I don't mean that. No. This isn't like politics. This isn't like somebody who goes on to a Sunday morning show and says, I agree with the president or I disagree with the president. And then the camera goes off and they're like, yeah, I don't believe any of that. That's not what this is. How that makes you feel about the opinions and everything is up to you. Let's see. I see people weighing in on Jiricek, but that was a while ago. Ryan Schiffler over on X says, I think we all agree Tocchet isn't the answer here. But I do think that Danny Briere has some good value assets to put together to make a move that helps some of our needs. Maybe. The thing is that, like, and this is where it's tricky. So go back. Amadeo can actually do this, but, like, go back to the summer. Go back to when Tocchet was hired. And I kept saying, I don't want that to be the hire. It's not because he's a bad coach. Not a great playoff pedigree as a head coach. That is true. But I wanted them to go and, like, you learn from the Tortorella mistake. He was not a rebuild coach. Go get a guy who can grow with the team, because I still thought they were 2 or 3 years away, even with, like, getting some high picks, from being able to actually compete. And to me, like, Furschweiler was an interesting name. That was a guy that, like, I was kind of behind. Again, I'm not saying Tocchet's a bad coach. I'm saying I don't think he's really the right guy for this team right now. But then again, this team is in a weird spot where they've got the core of Konechny and Sanheim and their associated parts, and then you have this like newer, younger wave of guys, and like the Michkovs and the Barkeys and the Bumps and all those guys, and Tippett's somewhere in there, and Forster, and Cates. So they're kind of like two teams jammed together. And so like you could see a scenario where like on a team that has a Konechny and a Sanheim, Tocchet makes a lot of sense. But then you can see that when there's this large influx of young players coming up, I don't think he is. So I don't know. Let's see. Amadeo says, I really wish they would fire him. He just isn't the right coach. They won't fire him. They won't fire him. We all know, I think at this point, right, and this has been put out there publicly, that he's got a very good relationship with at least one of the people in the front office. He was well thought of by people in the organization. They're not going to fire him after 1 year. It would take like a Tortorella Cam York times 5, I think, level blow up. It would take Matvei Michkov requesting a trade publicly for them to, I think, make that determination. It would take Michkov saying, I have tried all season to get better and to do the right thing, and this coach continues to take shots at me. And I really enjoy it here, but I don't think I can play for this guy. It would take something like that. Or it would take a public display of Konechny and Sanheim saying, this isn't it. It would take some combination of like Couturier, Konechny, and Sanheim going to the front office and saying, for as much as Torts lost us last year or the year before, Tocchet cannot be the coach. That's what it would take, and it's not going to happen. I don't see it. Let's see. I got to try to fly through some of this because I still want to get to the Sixers World Baseball Classic, and we are running out of time. All right. WAJ says, Tocchet is my favorite player ever. I had his jersey in the 80s as a kid. I loathe him as a head coach. Well, there you go. There's an example of somebody I was talking about before. Let's see. Chris Freed says Tocchet has 4 more years at $5 million a year. He ain't going anywhere for at least 2 more years. He knows this. I mean, yeah, again, unless it is a wildly public blow up. DS7913 says, let's not forget a huge contingent of this fan base didn't want an ex-Flyer as coach. Flyers hockey hasn't won us a cup since 1975. Yeah, that's true. Kate1323 says, this was never a rebuild. If it had been, then Torts and Tocchet would never have been hired. Remember, though, the Tocchet hire, even though Fletcher was hesitant about it, theoretically was a good hire for Fletcher in that, like, it was going to keep them in the playoff hunt. It was just that Fletcher was such a bad GM that it all still fell apart. Let's see. B. Condor says Brad Shaw for 1 or 2 years would have been the right choice. I also was totally fine with the idea of Shaw remaining here, but it was very clear they did not want to just bring him back. Amy says, devil's advocate, isn't it possible that 2 coaches, 1 player, maybe the coaches are not the problem? Tortorella and Michkov apparently had a much better relationship than we were led to believe, which I think largely comes from Michkov's comments after Tortorella's firing. And I think even in the aftermath, when Tortorella talks about Michkov on TV, I think it's clear that, like, there was a mutual level of respect, whatever that means. Let's see. I got to fly through some more of this. Amy says the team made him the savior, and maybe he's not. That's also a big reason for the atmosphere surrounding Michkov and any criticism. I would not say the team made him the savior. I would actually point back to the start of the 24-25 season when Hilferty and Briere and Jones said that while he's a really important part of it, even if you looked at the branding materials for the team, they did not put Michkov front and center. He was on some billboards that year, but he was in the background. He was not like right in the front, the same way that you would put like a young Bedard or McDavid or Ovechkin or Crosby. Like, they didn't do that. I think they've actually, for the most part, tried to do a decent level of like managing expectations, but the fan base got really excited last year, and they should. I'm not blaming the fans for it. It's the first real prospect they've had in a very long time. Let's see. Greg Bondarenko's here. Hello, Greg. K-Dub asks, when are Jonesy's league-wide connections going to pay off? We're still waiting for a 1C and a 1D. Does a rebuild even begin before getting one? That's the ultimate question. I don't know how you can move to the next phase when you don't have either of those. Healthy Productions 4 says they are past the point of tanking this year. Play the young guns. Hope they string together some wins. No, I will not hope that they string together some wins. No, actually, no. They are not out of the realm of being able to get themselves into a position where they could add an actual talented player to this young player pool no, I will not buy into that. The Flyers this morning are at 69 points through 62 games. That has them in 14th place in the lottery, which is bad. But the gap between that and Winnipeg, who currently have the 6th best odds of the number 1 pick, it's a 7-point gap with 20 games to play, which means there are 40 potential points still out there. We're talking about a 7-point gap. And by the way, it's all kind of gummed up. Seattle's at 67 points. Washington is at 69 points, but they've played 64 games. LA's at 64 points. Florida, 65. New Jersey, 66. Nashville, 64. Interestingly enough, Toronto will probably owe their pick to Boston. And as it's currently set up, Toronto has 65 points, and that pick would convey to the Bruins, which is hilarious and also horrible. No. Let's see. I saw somebody throwing out the name Berglund. Berglund, I think, will be an interesting one. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a real long look next year in camp. We'll see if it happens. Let's see. Healthy Production says, Bradshaw was right in front of us and we chose Tocchet. Never change, Flyers. Yeah. Amadeo says, they won't let fans express frustrations at the town hall meeting. Coatsy will prevent that from happening. No. I mean, you could try. I mean, Coatsy tried a few years ago with Fletcher and he got, Fletcher got booed mercilessly and then Coatsy tried to calm it down, but nah. Raymond Supper says, there was a report someone had about a trade that didn't get paperwork done on time. My mind immediately said the Flyers. I don't think that's it. Could be wrong. I don't think that's it. Healthy ask Eric thanks me for not being a Comcast show. You're welcome. All right. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to get to over here. Sutliff says the Flyers need to trade some prospects for established players. Free agency is going to be trash, and the team needs better veteran leadership. 10 years of this team spinning the wheels. A lot of that is true. All right. I think I'm good there for right now. Thank you to everybody else who commented. Let me see. Vacant alleyways. I did talk about those comments, so you can go back and check them out later. Chris Mack says, you people are going to see when TK, Sanheim, Tippett, Sealer, and picks get dealt this summer. Yeah, Chris Mack, do me a favor. Come back. Come back in the summer when that doesn't happen. I hope the energy that you have for that is twice as loud as that comment. Konechny, Sanheim, Tippett, Sealer, and picks are all going to get dealt? No. Konechny will get dealt if he's had enough of the losing, which it sounds like he kind of has. Sanheim will only get dealt if he decides he wants to get dealt, which I don't necessarily think he does. Tippett could get moved. I think Sealer will get moved. Could picks get traded on draft day? Sure. So maybe those last three. But you can't throw Konechny and Sanheim in there. Oh, he says probably Noah Cates too. Wow, so they're going to trade Konechny, Sanheim, Tippett, Sealer, Cates, and picks. Yeah, no. I cannot wait for all the Flyers trolls to eat crow after July 1st. I look forward to it. I'll tell you what. If Danny Briere somehow pulls off a Paul Holmgren offseason of going worst to first, and he somehow figures out a way to go and get the equivalent of the Hartnell and Chemo Timonen trade, if he can pull that off and set up a team next year for massive levels of success, I'm here for it. I don't actively root for the Flyers to fail. I want the Flyers to win. I would really, really like to cover a team that makes the playoffs and feels like they have a chance of winning a cup every year. I really, really, really would like that when I drive down to the arena somewhere around 41 nights a year to go down and do press row show, 41 nights that I'm not spending with my young kids and my wife, I would like it to feel like those 41 nights are not in vain. I would like it to feel like those nights are spent being excited about a team that can win a cup. And unfortunately, it has just been the truth that I spend many of those nights driving down hoping that the Flyers will win a game. And I have spent more nights driving home feeling the sting of defeat and a question about direction more than anything else. This is it. This is where I'm at. So, okay. We got that. Flyers done. Cool. Sixers are a mess. I don't even know where to go on the Sixers, and I want to talk about the World Baseball. You know what? Let me give you a little pick me up real quick. Little pick me up. Okay. Yeah. Is that real? I just saw. We don't go into geopolitics on the show, but they're making it sound like Australia's going to send the Iranian women's soccer team back to Iran. There are some public comments that make me think that is not a great humanitarian decision to send them back. There's like some state TV stuff saying about treating them as traitors. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that in Iran, if you are accused of being a traitor, that doesn't typically go well. I don't know how Australia's going to send them back. Maybe they'll end up in the U.S. I don't know. Okay. Real quick, I want to go over to the World Baseball Classic because there is something that we need to talk about. There is a very interesting thing that happened at the World Baseball Classic. Now, we could talk about Kyle Schwarber smashing a Schwarbomb against Great Britain, and it happened. And it was pretty damn impressive. But there's actually a thing that I wanted to get to more than anything else. It is the first time in my life that I've felt so seen, I think, in my entire life. So Italy has a team. Aaron Nola's pitching for them. Italy has a team at the World Baseball Classic. And their manager walked media through something that is very unique to the Italy dugout. So here's the Italian manager, Francesco Cervelli. And I want you to hear what he has to say about this very unique element that's been added to Team Italy's dugout in the World Baseball Classic. Here he is. It's probably hard to hear this, but if you could see that, they've got an espresso bar.
Coffee is a way of living.
Oh.
Not just a drink, okay?
Let's run that back.
Coffee is a way of living.
I think he said coffee is a way of living. And then he goes back to his espresso. They have a full espresso bar in the Team Italy dugout, which on the surface, you're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Except it got even better. So if you've been following Team Italy, you will also know that it didn't just end there. No, it's not like a pregame ritual alone. There's one other thing that's been happening, and we have to go about presenting this in a certain way, otherwise we'll get flagged by the good old folks at YouTube. But here's what Team Italy's doing after their team hits a home run in the World Baseball Classic. They give the player who hit a home run an espresso shot. So they're doing espresso shots, not espresso martini shots. They're doing espresso shots in the dugout after home runs. I'm 100% here for it. I have not yet had my opportunity to make an espresso this morning, but rest assured, when this show is over, I'm going upstairs and I'm making myself a nice espresso. I think I'm going to go a little latte art today, a little bit of oat milk. I think I'm feeling an oat milk latte today. I'm going to do it. No sugar added. The last time I went over to Europe, when I was over there in Vienna and in Barcelona, I spent, almost 2 weeks over there not putting sugar in my coffee. And so now since I've been back, it's espresso and it's oat milk, and there's nary a bit of sugar. If and when I am spotted in public with a coffee from Starbucks, there is typically sugar in that coffee, but I treat it like it's a dessert. I don't treat that like, oh, I need my morning cup of coffee with God knows how many grams of sugar in it. Nay. Nick Abe says, show us the Schwarber picture. I don't know. Well, was there a special Schwarber picture you wanted me to show you? He hit the home run. Let me see. Here, we can go through it this way. This'll work. Hold on. Here is Kyle Schwarber's home run. We can go frame by frame because it was a thing of beauty. The cool thing is, as he's hitting Schwarbombs, not for the Phillies, you get a good feel for how exciting it is to watch Kyle Schwarber hit home runs. Here you go. Bang! There it goes. And a nice big home run out of Kyle Schwarber against Great Britain. That guy represents the USA well, man. I feel like I'm falling further and further back into John Gruden here. I'm telling you, man. That Kyle Schwarber, he's a heck of a player, man. If I needed to set up a lineup myself, man, he'd be on there, 100%. Let's not get it twisted, man. I don't know if this is the picture Nick Abe wanted, but I'll throw this out there too. Major League Baseball put this out. Here's a picture of Kyle Schwarber, if you needed it, in his red, white, and blue. There you go. There you go. Kyle Schwarber just looking into your soul. Crushing some Schwarber bombs. Good on him. All right. Let's see. I'm also being told there's something from Team USA. I don't know what the Team USA picture is. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'll try to find it. If I can find it, I'll find it. All right. Let's see. I think the last thing we had to get to was the Sixers and what a disaster the Sixers have been. And unfortunately, I kind of don't want to talk about the Sixers, but I did say that I was going to on this team or on the show. So I guess we have to talk about what's going on with the Sixers. So Tyrese Maxey got hurt, and it really just feels like the world is falling apart for the Sixers. And I want to make it very clear. I don't put the blame for this entire lost season, because now it does feel very much like a lost season. I don't put all of the blame at a single person's feet, but I put 95% of it at the feet of Daryl Morey. I do. The Sixers were in a position where they 100,000% should have been able to make a decent playoff run. And that playoff run would probably have been led by Tyrese Maxey and Paul George and VJ Edgecombe and Joel Embiid whenever he was in the lineup. I cannot begin to fully express without yelling what a disastrous trade the Jared McCain deal ended up being. And we all knew it when it happened, but it just feels like each and every night, every time the Thunder take the court, every time Jared McCain pops up for 20 points or something close to it, it's like getting beaten over the head with a club again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And I'm not mad at Jared McCain. I'm not mad at Jared McCain at all. Jared McCain was a wonderful player for this team. And yet, Daryl Morey decided to move on from him. And I think it's an absolutely disgraceful move. And it's one that could actually set this franchise back even further. And that's even considering how far it's been set back by injuries to Joel Embiid, the suspension to Paul George, the injuries to Paul George, now an injury to Tyrese Maxey, an injury to VJ Edgecombe. I have wanted so much to be able to really fully believe in the Sixers. And I'm now finding myself very much out on the Sixers. It was a season that had a lot of good feelings to it, had a lot of good vibes to it. They've got 19 games left. Those 19 games can't come and go fast enough. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games. The good bit of news, I guess, is at 34-29, they are not totally out of being able to get somewhere into the lottery. But the bad news for them is that they're going to have an unfathomably low percentage of being able to get a top 4 pick, which is kind of its own mess, right? If they were to somehow get to where Atlanta is currently, and Atlanta's pick will convey to San Antonio if they finish where they're at. They're 2 games over 500. The Sixers would have a 0.5% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. They'd have a 2.4% chance of getting a top 4 pick. That's it. I mean, it's not great. It's not great at all. So, yeah, not great. Not great. Feels gross. The one thing that the Sixers can maybe kind of look to is that pick that they own from Houston. But Houston is 6-4 in their last 10 games. And Houston is, I don't know, one of the 6 or 7 best teams record-wise in the NBA. So you're probably looking at a pick that's going to be mid-late 20s. Is that enough to get you excited? Probably not. So Yeah, not great. Not great. Tyrese Maxey being out is also like a total bummer because it's one thing if you know the season is effectively lost, but you still get to go out and watch some combination of Maxey and Edgecombe play together. You feel good about it. But like with him being out now, it's like almost impossible. How do you justify spending money to go see the Sixers right now? If Edgecombe is out, if Maxey is out, if Embiid is out, if Paul George is still suspended. How? So it sounds like he sprained his pinky. Shams put out that he sprained the right fifth finger. What the hell is the right fifth finger? It's either this one, it's his thumb, or it's this one, it's his pinky. I tend to think it's his pinky. So he's out for 2 games, and then he'll further undergo testing. But like this season is effectively over. And as much as I love basketball, as much as I love the Sixers, like I'm not watching this shit. I mean, I will watch it for the purposes of this show, but I'm not going to watch it willingly and happily. I'll probably watch it on DVR, skip all the commercials. I'm not going to sit down and watch the games live. Awful. Just truly awful. Now, there's one good bit of news that we can talk about here really quickly. John Clark put this out. I assume that it was over on Instagram. I should actually look and see. Not that I have anything against John Clark, but like I do kind of wonder if maybe this is a better thing to put out from Tyrese Maxey's Instagram. John Clark put it out. I'm actually looking to see where the hell it came from. Was it a story? Where did John Clark get this? Huh. Well, anyway, John Clark posted over on Twitter that Tyrese Maxey put this up presumably on Instagram or somewhere, maybe on an Instagram story. We don't know. It seems like Tyrese Maxey and his girlfriend are expecting a child. So, you know what? Let's end on a little bit of positivity today. Congrats to Tyrese Maxey and his girlfriend. That's awesome. Gonna have a kid. We got that heads up from John Clark. I don't know where that was on social media, but John Clark found it. So there you go. Let's see. Anything else I wanted to get to over in the comments before we go? I'm not sure. MJ Bruno says, I will spend money to go watch Jabari Walker and Andre Drummond every time, Russ. Good on you. Good on you. All right. I think it's probably a good spot to end. I wanted to end on a much more positive note, but no, it was not to be. Here, we'll also throw to this really quick because Nick Abe is, I guess, very bullish on the idea of this being an iconic image. It's a good one. It's a good one. We'll give credit where it's due. This is from Team USA. This is after Schwarber hit that Schwarber bomb. It's a good shot. There you go. It says for glory with the U.S. flag on it. Yeah, I like it. It's a good one. Here. There you go. Rock solid. All right. I will be back on Wednesday. It might be a pre-recorded show. I'm not sure. Probably going to be a pre-recorded show. I cannot be live. I have meetings at 10 o'clock on Wednesday. I don't know if there will be a guest. I might figure that one out. I would encourage you to still watch. I would encourage you to watch. If it's not at 10 o'clock and it's not pre-recorded and all that lovely stuff, I'll put a note on social media and on the YouTube channel if it's either going to be, we're going to skip Wednesday, or if it's going to be an afternoon show live. So I'll keep you posted. Don't forget, it is Monday night, Flyers, Rangers at Xfinity Mobile Arena. So I'll be down there with Ant. Bundy, I think, is still under the weather. So it's probably just going to be me, Ant, and intern Andrew doing Flyers, Rangers tonight at Xfinity Mobile Arena, 6:30 start. So we've got that going on. And then this week's episode of Snow the Goalie Radio is on Thursday instead of Wednesday. It's on Thursday, 6 o'clock in Bordentown at Jakey's and Pete's. So mark your calendar. If you want to come out and talk some puck, it'll be Thursday at Jakey's and Pete's in Bordentown. Okay, now I got to go. Everybody have a great rest of your day. I will talk to all of you Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. Go find it on the podcast apps like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll talk to each and every one of you Wednesday on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now. Now I actually mean to hit the button to end it, so